Hello everyone, my name is Dan Barnhart. I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome you. We've got Infor CEO Charles Phillips and our executive team up here to take some Q&A from this audience. So we're going to have people with mics passing around. If you've got any questions for this team, let us know. We'll bring the mic over to you. We've got about a half an hour for Q&A and then we'll wrap up. Enjoy your lunch. Thank you.
Yeah.
So hi. A lot of the stuff this morning has been talked around new products that are really sort of service offerings or abilities to engage so you can build stuff for people or they can build things for themselves. And I'm just interested in where you're taking from a growth perspective, how you see that panning out in terms of the balance between the services revenue you bring in versus license revenue and how that services aspect impacts your customers and your growth over the next 2 or 3, 4 years.
Yeah. Sorry. And how do you think about growth for those streams?
Yeah. So, we talked about that a little bit this morning where, I guess I'll say it this way. Listen, services is dilutive to a software company, right? And what are we? We're a software company. No question about it. So we're not schizophrenic about our identity of what and who we are and where we're going to grow our business. Our growth trajectory is not in services. Our growth trajectory will be in licensed business. So I guess that's statement number one. Statement number two is we need a healthy, strong consulting business to help us with customer referenceability, to help us educate our partners and build out the ecosystem. So you'll see up some of the financial metrics that we have. The growth targets are less than not less, but mid-single digits for consulting. And our utilization is only in the 60, 61, 62% utilization rate, not the traditional SI scale. Why? Because we have a lot of those folks invested. I talked earlier about the value engineering work. To go into these large customers and do all this work, we need a lot of support. So consulting plays a tremendous role in helping drive the license business, helping drive the ecosystem. But it is not our intent to continue to do double-digit growth in services. We really want to drive that engine to drive highly, highly profitable software dollars. So is that your question? I want to make sure not...
I guess so. I'm interested in sort of balancing how much of your revenue is going to come from that part and how you do things. And what expertise you need to be able to do that, because a lot of the stuff you're bringing out now is expertise you don't have.
Right.
So it's how you actually, grow that and change your team and keep that in line with the way customers are needing. So it's how you're looking to balance that and what you're looking to do in terms of growing against that background.
Sure. So it's a little bit of what I just said, which is we're not going to go get the next British Aerospace. Our largest license transaction in history, British Aerospace, relies on Accenture, right? So building out the support system at Accenture is important to us. So when you say the balance of software and services, we're going up market with this globals team. We're getting huge license transactions at British Aerospace, at Siemens, at Greif. Those types of transactions require us to have a strong ecosystem at TCS. We just signed up Tata Consulting Services, one of the largest SIs in the world, to a commitment of them to drive our license business. Infosys is coming on board to our partnership. So the balance really is when you go up market, we're going to drive a lot of that big deal type services business to the integrators, which grows our ecosystem. Our services business's role is really to play alongside our SIs. I'm not a big believer in let our partners do it all. We have to have this co-prime notion. So I want a seat at the table of our biggest customers. So that's where back to your question of balance, we will play a vital role in driving the referenceability for our customers. So we will have a seat at the table. We will educate and support our partners. We will do a lot of activity in the sales cycle with our partners. But our intent is to absolutely significantly grow the global capability of our services ecosystem.
Ray Wong with Constellation Research. The question I have is really around verticals. You're in a lot of verticals today, and it's two-part. The first one is, what verticals are you seeing the greatest traction in? And what verticals are you not in that would be on your short list of adding in the next 3 to 5 years?
I would say, for the most part, am I on?
I don't think, can you hear him? I don't think so.
Can you hear me? Am I on now? For the most part, we'll probably stay mostly confined to our existing verticals and go much deeper. So we have about 13 industries already, and underneath that's a lot of micro verticals. There's a lot of additional value we can add there just to make sure that we have a complete footprint. We're not in some big ones like financial services, insurance, telcos, but I think in terms of segmenting the market and focusing, which is I think what we have to do, and making sure that we protect our domain expertise and go deeper, that's our best strategy. So most of the acquisitions will be tucking things around the verticals we're already in.
Hello? You mentioned a lot about your vertical solutions, for example, for automotive industry. But I know you have several ERP solutions for each industry. So how can you help the customer choose the right solution for different type of, for example, automotive companies? That is the question number one. And Charles mentioned about the 2 Chinese customers today, Gree and another automotive companies. So how could Infor support locally, for example, Chinese industry? Thank you.
Well, what we're trying to communicate is the ERP systems we have, view them as engines that are specific to a couple of verticals. So depending on the size company and the vertical, we have pretty much a playbook and a feature list that's appropriate for that customer, assuming it's one of our target verticals. So it kind of naturally plays out. We don't have one engine for all verticals, as we mentioned. Now, everything else around it, the infrastructure and all the things we've been talking about, we have extracted that. That means we can go faster on the ERP engine itself for that particular vertical, and that allows us to innovate a lot more quickly and allows customers to accommodate change. That was the other key goal here, is they're always afraid to upgrade, afraid to take on new technology because so many things break and that's a cost to them. So relating this back to the consulting comment, a lot of the things people are spending money on consulting on, we are productizing, right? So even though we will use external consultants more, we should never have the ratio that other large companies have in terms of consulting the license, because what are they doing? They're doing the localizations, they're doing reports, they're building mobility, all these things that don't come with the application. Well, that goes to third parties, where we want to productize that as well.
Charles. Oh yeah, I've got it. I'll ask you anyway. This morning you said you got 5 straight orders of companies. Can you give us some competitive where that's coming from? So regionally and product-wise, where are you finding that?
We talked about double-digit growth for 5 quarters regionally, and by product, where is that coming from?
Yeah, it's actually been pretty consistent across regions. So despite all the headlines about Europe being challenged, we've actually had very strong double-digit growth in Europe as well. The US has been very strong. And Asia Pacific, of course, is typically our strongest region, typically upper teens, lower 20% in that region. Across products, interestingly, ERP has been very strong for us. You've heard about some of the larger transactions, which tend to be ERP-centric, but even our mid-market business, even our channel business with companies with less than $100 million of revenue has been very, very strong. So those are some of the areas. Certainly business intelligence continues to be strong for us, as it does for the rest of the industry. Asset management's another area where we're fairly differentiated. So there's some highlights. HCM, very good point. Yep.
So I had a quick question around the system integrator, since you guys talked about it a little bit. Obviously, one of the key levers to drive top-line growth is going up market, and so you need the support of the system integrators such as TCS. So the thing that I'm trying to reconcile is on one side you want more support from those guys, but on the other side you're talking about reducing the installation time from 3 years with an SAP Oracle to 6 to 9 months. You're talking about zero downtime upgrade, and you're also talking about very little customization because you have the templates. I mean, that just seems like, why would a system integrator push your product versus an Oracle and an SAP?
You accurately put your finger on a challenge we face. We are counting on the fact that the market has changed, that customers don't have the patience for these 5-year implementations or the money or the interest in doing so. So if you're wedded to that model and you think the market hasn't changed, it's probably not a good business decision. So more and more of the integrators are coming around to the view that we're going to have to add value other ways. We need to demonstrate success faster and more often. And it's a good thing that the customer is getting value sooner. It's hard to argue against that. Secondly, there's a new kind of generation of integrators who don't have those same constraints. So we've announced a deal with Tata. We're working on one with Infosys right now. Cyber is hungry. So somebody who's willing to do it. There's plenty of people out there who are hungry for a third practice because it's so competitive on the two out there and not as much change happening. Whereas we're shipping a lot of new stuff, a lot of things happening. We have a huge install base that wants to upgrade. We have a lot going on. It's just not going to be the same type of deal you had before where it's 5 years and fixed cost contracts or time and materials for 5 years, and you can just sit there in the same account for 5 years. We're not going to do that. But it doesn't mean there's not a lot of opportunity. You just have to do it the way we're doing it. So hopefully, we're already convinced that there's enough people interested, and if someone just has a different strategy, then so be it.
I think there's a second element to it, which is if you look at what's been traditionally implemented, less than 10, 12, 15% of the application gets used because of the heavy customization. So what we're finding, there still are big transactions, big opportunities, and yes, they are a lot less than our competitors. And so our win strategy at British Aerospace was that we were able to implement that rich, broad functionality so quickly. And I think that's been the focus of, for example, Accenture in that scenario, where we were talking about a whole new bunch of business wave type functionality that they need to deliver the new Fokker jets that they have to build, versus getting into integration, customizations, enhancements conversations. It was a much different conversation. So the bucket of money was still pretty big for them, and they were pretty excited by it, but it was more tuned towards a different level of conversation.
And also, some of the brand names that we're winning, no matter who you are, if we're going into BAE, you're going to want to be involved in that. Even if it's only 9 months, it's better than not being there.
Question. You mentioned that indeed your revenue is license-based, but if you have something, if you have developments like, for instance, Upgrade S, etc., where you say you can go to the cloud and preferably stay there, clearly you have nowadays the increasing role of software as a service, your company, a software company. How do you see your business model evolve? Today, license revenue based. When or how do you see perhaps a crossover or a change towards more source, as in service based revenue? And how do you see indeed evolve this for Infor? Also because you're very well present in medium-sized companies as well.
So this question was about a service we're introducing tomorrow called Upgrade S. And just briefly, we're basically going to go back into our install base and encourage them to upgrade to the current releases with a more prescriptive program. And it's a service with some tooling as well. But the idea is you can upgrade from an on-premise application directly into the cloud is what I recommended path. Now, if you just want to upgrade, stay on-premise and retire your customizations, obviously we'll do that. But we think we have a large install base of customers who, and a lot of them are mid-market as well, who probably don't have large IT staffs, who want to get current. They get a lot of value, and they get all the benefits from ION. So for us, since they're already paying us support, there really is no license impact. It's incremental. Once we're delivering the service and responsible for, all the hardware and the networking and the upgrade, so we're going to upcharge for that. So you can think of it as a maintenance or subscription that's going to increase in value because they obviously will have to pay something for that. Right now, based on the modeling, what they will save versus what we have to charge, we can probably bump up their maintenance or subscription by 50%, and they still save a ton of money. So it's an incremental upcharge for us. It's all found money if it works, and a lot of value for customers. So I don't know if you guys want to jump in on anything.
System iBase. I mean, look at just
System iBase, all these guys, yeah.
We have 10,000 System I customers that with the upgrade strategy of PowerFlex, which is really building pre-configured scripts and showing them the path to how they can stay on their existing AS400 platform, but leverage the new applications that we have, that's a licensing event. And that's where we see a tremendous monetizing opportunity in a base where Infor wasn't able to do that. It was a 25% declining business unit within Infor before our arrival, and it's now a growth business. We're growing the license business, but it's the upgrade part of it that is so imperative to show how an AS400 existing client can take advantage of new technology. So the scripts, the migration components to it. So I think upgrades are crucial and a big licensing opportunity for us.
Yeah. Hi, it's Paul Hammerman from Forrester Research. So you're selling a portfolio of application products which are, by and large, acquired versus built in-house. Yet you talked about hiring a large number of software developers. And could you talk about any plans to build products which are natively Infor's products that that you'll originate versus acquire?
Yeah, I mean. Yeah, we do that today, right? So the hospitality management solution that we delivered is a natively cloud application. It's a complete end-to-end hospitality management solution written natively from the ground up by Infor. A lot of the applications that we build around, that we announced for healthcare, the clinical bridge, recall management, so on, are all natively built applications. So I would say by and large, we build more applications organically than we do acquire today.
Ion as well, Duncan.
Yeah, Ion was natively built. The BI stuff.
And a lot of the new modules are around Sightline.
So I would say in general we have more of an organic development strategy than we do an acquisition one. So.
Hi. So Infor over the last maybe year, 18 months has done a phenomenal rebranding strategy, and I think for everyone in the room, we're here because we see it and we understand it, but you've got 70,000 customers. Where do you think you are in your install base getting people to see where you are and understand all the changes? Of that 70,000 customer install base, how many are you active with at any given time? And where are you internally on your own infrastructure merging? I don't even know how many application or acquisitions you've done, certainly more than 10, and of those 10, they did acquisitions. So where's your infrastructure internally, and how do you feel about your opportunity going back into the 70,000 customers, maybe 50,000 that have been dormant or relatively dormant, and your ability to go to them, know who they are, find them, and sell to them again?
Well, we know who they are. The 70,000 are ones we've validated. There's probably more, but the ones that we know about. I would say we're probably 10% of the way in terms of educating them. Most of them have heard none of this, and they remember Infor from 5 years ago as their impression. But they know us because they're buying add-on seats and doing things that were technical, but maybe weren't doing big things. But over the last year, the communication they've seen coming from us is, kind of hitting them like a tidal wave now, and they're starting to learn. But we have a long way to go before we reach them all. I mean, this is complicated stuff, so it's hard to just send an email. It's kind of, you got to do the blocking and tackling, getting up in front of people. So one thing we did was the Infor 10 tour around the world. Duncan and Stefan did a great job on it. Even Kevin was out on the road and giving. Even Kevin. And so we all got out there. And so we did make a change in our marketing organization for the next 12 months. We want to take several $1 million and do nothing but events around the world and just really quadruple the number of events that we're doing. Because I think that's the only way we can do it, just small in-person events, kind of 15, 20 people around the world, hundreds of them. And it's most effective than anything else we're doing. So we cut out a lot of this other stuff because, marketing people like to do branding stuff and all sorts of stuff that I can't track. We just do this one thing mostly. Let's focus on getting people in the room and telling them about the news story. That's going to take a lot of work. We're in the early stages of that. This sort of thing helps because this is the first time they've all, any significant amount of customers of this size have come together. There hadn't been an Inforum in, I don't know, 4 years. And so getting people together and telling the story is a part of it. But we have a lot of work to do. So we have a lot more capability in product than we've been able to communicate.
And your infrastructure?
Internal, yeah.
Consolidating all the IT and...
Yeah, so we're in great shape on that front. Obviously, during the downturn, we were able to really focus on that. And at this point, we literally have a single instance of each one of our internal systems. And it's Lawson included. It's been put on that same single instance. And it's all of our products. And we're using Ion. So we're a good case study. There aren't many $3 billion companies with a few hundred legal entities that are as centralized as we are on our products using Ion. So we're in very good shape there. And I would say, with regard to integration on sort of what I'll call the front end, that's really been accelerated since these guys joined 18 months ago. Because before, when we had all different product front ends and no integration, it was much more difficult from a Salesforce perspective or a services perspective to really be unified. With all the technology that's been introduced, now that's all come together as well. So all the Salesforce is working together. Everyone thinks of themselves as Infor. So big strides on that front as well.
Dennis Howard, one for you, Charles, really. You've had an opportunity to, in one sense, clear the decks and start afresh, and we're obviously seeing the benefits of that coming back. The question really is, how do you see the company's ability to grow a large and thriving ecosystem of developers, which I think long-term is going to be crucial for serious double-digit growth going forward? That seems to be the model that looks as though it's going to work. We've seen it with Apple, we're seeing it elsewhere. What are your thoughts around that?
You guys want to take that?
Let's get off
the building developer ecosystem?
Yeah, although we want less development, but go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, first of all, I don't, so the question was, do we have a strategy to build a... Yeah, I mean, so the design point, just take Mongoose as an example, right, which is the, our cloud-based development, application development platform. I mean, the design for that, initially, the problem we were trying to solve was how do we help customers that have add-on modules that are distinct and unique to them, that they can easily build in a technology that's loosely coupled and doesn't break up every time they upgrade it. And then how can we put tools in place for our partners to add unique differentiation that's specific to what they're doing as well. I don't know if right out of the gate we're trying to be a standalone business in application development in the cloud, and you know what I mean? It's not like we're in the technology business because we're a business applications company, not because we want to be a pure play technology middleware company. So we have to recruit and build a developer ecosystem and help our partners understand how they add value doing that. But then again, our strategy is to put more back in the base code. We don't want lots of complexity and all these other modules hanging off it. And that's one of the things we ask our customers. When we sit down with our customers, we say, what modifications have you done? What modules have you had to bolt on? What are the integration points you have, and what systems are there? We'd like all of that in a single product that's easy to implement with no modifications, right? So that's kind of our strategy. Whereas we recruit partners and educate customers in case they need to do things where they extend the product that are just specific to them, right?
But we want, not a lot of that. We want them to build the in-context apps, right? Mm-hmm. So that's where they spend the time, but that's easy to do. That's more of exposing data that's already there, right. And that's why we send such large transactions. So when we send the transaction, it's the full document. It's the complete order. I don't care if you change it 20 times, you get 20 versions of everything. And so anything you want is going to be in that business vault, and so you can build as many context apps as you want. So that's where they should be spending the time.
Rob Kugel with Ventana Research. For the benefit perhaps of the investors in the room, if we could circle back to the business opportunity, the magnitude of the business opportunity in various buckets of the business. So there's the net new business, there's the upsell, the existing applications, either they're buying some sort of a migration or they're expanding their footprint in a specific thing that they already have, and then the add-ons. If you could kind of talk maybe the magnitude of the opportunity that you see over the next 5 years, for each of those three buckets, where...
well, Kevin, I
So look at the results. There's a couple of perspectives. One is the synergy on the product portfolio between Infor and Lawson is absolutely clear. You have 60,000 Infor customers who don't have human capital management from Lawson. You have 10,000 Lawson customers who don't have Infor's enterprise asset management product. And so all the results that you've seen from us, it's a negative statement, but it's a positive for the future, which is we've only sold $1.5 million of software as cross-sell since we bought Lawson back in July. So in terms of go-forward growth opportunity, filling out the industry bill of materials, where in healthcare you can absolutely see the applicability of enterprise asset management and workforce management. Building out that bill of materials is what the focus is of the healthcare team. You look at, on the Lawson, on the Infor side, building out that human capital management, that talent management approach to all those customers we have is huge growth opportunity. That's one. Two is this globals conversation I mentioned earlier. We're going up market. We're having significant traction up market. We had a 4-person team when we started, and we're now a 75, 80-person team that does nothing but go into the biggest companies around the world and drive this conversation of industry and how we can do things a lot less expensive than the competition that they have. So up market, big opportunities. Selling our whole ION industry core strategy is really, I would say, the second core element to what we're doing. Anything you want to add to that?
No, I think that's right. Actually, if you look at our growth over the last 5 or 6 quarters, it's been our mix of direct, or I should say new customer to existing base, has stayed fairly consistent. So we're seeing very nice high teens growth in both sections of our business. Obviously, with all the product work, that really helps, particularly in our core customer base, but then also the notion of going up market and those same technologies make new customer acquisitions compelling. So honestly, we're seeing similar levels of growth in both aspects of our business.
And we expect that to continue. Absolutely. I mean, we actually, one of the design principles we had, what we inherited with Infor was a transaction machine. And we said, that is so hard in software to build out. The lumpiness you get in software is because you're so big deal focused. And so we always said to ourselves, never lose focus on that transaction machine that Infor has. So we're almost at our fiscal year end. We're going to have 4,000 more transactions this year over last year. So good news is we're maintaining that volume transaction, high profitable business, $8,000, $10,000, $20,000 deals. That's great from an investment perspective. And we're sprinkling in on top of that cross-sell piece, number 2, between Infor and Lawson. And 3, I would say to use this globals view of these major accounts that if you hit 3 or 4 or 5 of those big deals a quarter, that really is additive growth to the business. So that's how I guess I would summarize it.
And I would add a 4th in geography. If you look at China and Brazil, we do not have enough coverage there. We just put the mandate down to go hire another 100 reps. Let's get these areas covered. We have product, we have references, and we just have not been managed in a way and aggressively enough to expand. But now with the products coming, it makes sense to make that investment. So just for everyone's benefit, we were constrained on doing the cross-sell legally because up until recently when we put the companies together with this very successful financing that Kevin helped lead, we were separate legal entities. We had an investment in Lawson, but it prevented us from compensating the 2 sales forces to sell each other's products. We weren't allowed to do that. That has gone away now. The second thing we had to do was build the integrations between the products because you can't do cross-sell and upsell if there's no integration, if the products look different, there's no process flows. That's there now. So with these 2 big things now behind us, we will kick off in June with a big training session focused on cross-sell and upsell.
Hello, gentlemen. Josh Greenbaum with Enterprise Applications Consulting. As many of my colleagues here have done, we've been making the rounds of the enterprise software vendors, and you're third on the batting order as far as I can see. Number 4 is coming up next. Pretty much everyone has regaled us, for better or worse, with tales of complex hybrid cloud implementation strategies and the underlying infrastructure and architecture to support that. I'm sensing an absence of a similar focus here, and I'm not bemoaning it necessarily in the least, but would like to understand whether you see this complexity of hybrid, on-premise, on-demand, cloud, and that movement or mobility between the 2 as a key strategic point you want to, or value you want to bring to your customers, or is this something really for the other market players and the other markets they focus on? And finally, where does that infrastructure support come from, and how will Infor customers going forward kind of live in that hybrid world that I think pretty much most of us think is going to be the deployment model of the future?
Well, the hybrid capabilities we have, the hybrid cloud as we call it, is a huge strength. We lead with that and talk about that because that's where most of our customers are. The fact that we have products that can run natively in the cloud as multi-tenant and also run on-premise is a huge strength. We virtualize those environments so we can ship the image back and forth. If you want to deploy in some locations in the cloud because you don't have IT infrastructure at headquarters, you maybe have more infrastructure and scale, you want to do that on-premise, or you have security issues. There's lots of different reasons people mix and match and decide kind of which model that they want. We don't force them down either path. We're indifferent. And so the ability to take parts of the infrastructure as well, Ion can run in the cloud, Business Vault can be in the cloud. All those decisions, there's all sorts of permutations, but it's the strength that we're flexible and allows us to add value to existing customers quickly. If we said the only way you can run our applications is you start over, do a new implementation on a completely separate product, a different code line, and do it in the cloud, that's a much tougher sell than saying, well, okay, you can move part of it now. You can just let me do some things around the edges that add value to add value and then complete the application in Ion. And that's a much quicker sale, and then we'll grow it over time.
Seem to have a lot riding on Ion, a lot of things that Ion has to achieve for you. You just spoke, I'll ask about two. You just spoke about going up market. How well will that technology handle the scale and performance expectations up there? And second, this morning you seem to present Ion as an alternative to ETL, traditional data management, data integration approaches. How proven is that? And something you can use for your new BI strategy, and how compatible with other approaches like Lawson's use of Microsoft-centric strategy?
Yeah, so from an Ion's, the elegance in its architecture is that it is loosely coupled, right? So from a latency and performance standpoint, it is built for high scalability. It's also built for a distributed environment if the customer so chooses to do that. So from scalability standpoint, I think the platform is architected the right way to be scalable. It's also tenant-aware, which is what allows us to support hybrid environment. And because it is loosely coupled, and all of the components that attach to that ecosystem stand on its own, lets itself for the ecosystem to actually be, in terms of a heterogeneous environment, to work in a scalable manner with a peer-to-peer, interaction with the components. So it actually has, even though a lot of it is riding on Ion, that's not where the weak link is. It's actually a conduit to communicate between all these different applications.
I would add a customer example who's here today is Ferrari. When you talk about the complexity and scalability of Ion, Ion is at the core of what Ferrari went live with in January. And this is a company, as you know, just to build a car, there's 4 million permutations in going into a car. The flexibility that they needed to build into their supply chain in order to meet the demands of the new markets in Dubai and China meant that they had to actually change some of those dimensions in terms of what gets built into the car while the car's in production. Something they've never been able to do before, and they were losing lots of business to Rolls-Royce and others. So Ion is at the core of assembly control all the way to the third-party logistics system in connecting all that information flow and making sure that the right parts get, even in week 3 out of a 4-week production cycle, make it into that car after week 3. So Vittorio, who's here, he'd be absolutely one who could talk to you about the scalability, the volume of information, the complexity of it, and really integrating that across their pretty wide and complicated supply chain would probably be the best example. British Aerospace, I mentioned that earlier, is at the core. I mean, you can speak to that one, Soma. British Aerospace, it was the tipping point for them in really seeing how they can integrate all the complexities of building these fighter jets with thousands of different suppliers that they have in using our products.
Yeah, so in business intelligence, our core platform consists of one, that business vault, because the transactions are already going there. So if you're installing Infor applications, that happens out of the box. We set up the business vault and start populating that with XML transactions. However, there will be some customers who want to add their own data to that, and so that's where we will have a bulk load capability if you want to add transactions from some other system and load it once or periodically if you choose to do that. The better way to do it, we want to do the trickle feed using ION, right? Just connect whatever third-party application, build an adapter for it, and send us the feeds after that. But at some point, if you have a third-party application you weren't using before, you're going to have to do a bulk load to get started, and then trickle feed after that. The actual reporting tool we use is Cognos. We've standardized on that as being our reporting tool on top of that. But the data is there. If people want to use their own tool and build their own reports, they can do that as well. And because it's an XML format, right now we shred it and put it in a relational database. We don't have to do that. Given that it's XML, we have some big data projects internally that we're not quite there yet on Reddit. We're evaluating a number of alternatives because they're all looking for a big showcase ISV who's not in the database business to showcase their products. So we're taking a look at all of them right now, and we'll entertain them. We'll pick one, maybe two of them, we'll see. Oh, and Aaliyah, you want to talk about Aaliyah and OLAP a little bit?
Yeah, so Cognos is the architecture we have for operational reporting, right? So, but for hardcore analytics, we have our own in-memory solution, which has about 4,000 or 5,000 customers already on it, and we're using that to provide the prepackaged analytics, dashboards, scorecards by industry. And again, all of that data is sourced from the business vault. And as we said earlier, when we send an XML document, we send an exhaustive set of information. So the beautiful thing about this is if you want to change a dashboard or add new metrics you hadn't thought of before, there's not a whole project you have to embark on around going to the source system and building ETL. It's all there in the vault, right? So it's part of our organization in Darmstadt. It used to be ELIA or MIS.
Hi, Cash Rongan at Merrill Lynch here. A couple of questions. One is, I believe you have a couple of hundred customers live on Infor 10. I'm wondering if you have goals to get that number up. What are you targeting the next few years? And is that going to be an important determinant of how you can do the cross-sell, upsell? That's one question. The other one is, can you just share with us your perspective on, I think SAP had BYD, it used to be called something else, now it's called BYD, and they have all-in-one. It's hard to keep track of their mid-market products, and I think Oracle bought JD Edwards a while back. How does this all play out? What's your view on what the big guys are doing on the mid-market level side with their mid-market products, if not the big bang high-end stuff? Thank you.
I don't have any specific goals.
Yeah, I don't think we certainly haven't stated any specific goals for ION, both either with respect to revenue or certainly number of units shipped. But our early returns are very, very positive. I mean, it was literally just released last December, and we're already well into the hundreds of products shipped, many multi-million-dollar transactions for ION already. So it's already getting nice momentum. But we certainly think when you think about the applicable market for that, it's enormous, both within our customer base. Every single customer has applicability, and then it is very compelling even for new business. So we haven't certainly stated any specific goals, but we're pretty optimistic about where it could head.
And just a point is that the reason we announced the ION Foundation, the ION Factory today, is the ability to cross-sell Infor 10 applications back into our installed base, right? So the ION Factory will actually build ION adapters to older releases if a customer isn't ready to move that core application, right? So you get access to all the kind of Infor 10 applications around a core micro-vertical engine. And by the way, in most cases, those Infor 10 applications can be deployed in the cloud as well, if you'd like, all connected via ION.
Yeah, I mean, that is a very key point because it promotes coexistence, right? So you don't have to have Infor 10, you don't have to take the entire suite and go to Infor 10. You can do it on your own timeline, one piece at a time. And that's really the beauty of the architecture that ION delivers.
Well, think about this. Once you do that, you surround your core application with a constellation of these rich Infor 10 apps that's driving real value, like asset management, mobility, so on. And it's using Ion to connect to those cloud-based applications. You could use Upgrade S to upgrade that core on-premise application to the cloud. And because Ion's loosely coupled, none of those integrations break. But to the end user, it's seamless. Into IT, all the integrations remain intact when you actually upgrade.
The state of mid-market?
Yeah, the mid-market, it's a different set of competitors, a lot less SAP and Oracle there. It tends to be other names. Microsoft does show up, and Epicor rather, companies like that. It's very hard for the larger companies to come down. If you have a rep that's making $1 million a year and he does 3 deals a year to get that, he has no interest in doing a $25,000 deal. You cannot pay him, you won't be able to force him to do it. So, and it's a separate product. So even inside of Infor, we have to have products that are focused on that market and reps that are separate from the global reps to focus on that market, because it's a different economic model. It's completely different. So it's two different DNA guys. You're not going to get a guy who's in his spare time when he's doing these big deals to go do some mid-market deals, and it just doesn't work. And so unless you're willing to say, let me take my next investment dollar and go down market when I could take that and go try to get a next $10 million deal, you're not going to get there. And that's always what it comes down to. I mean, I tried this several times. You just can't justify putting a lot of resources going down market when you see this huge opportunity up market.
We've got time for just 2 more questions, and then we'll have to wrap this up.
I'm Cindy Jutras from Mint Jutras. I think you've sort of hinted around the question that I've had in my mind, something in answering Dennis's question, but it really deals with your channels. And I know your goal is to increase your channel. Quite frankly, I think I've seen SAP do that in direct response to what Charles just said in terms of getting direct sales force to go after those smaller deals. So they're going after it with the channel. My question really is around the combination of your push in the channel, your release of Mongoose, and also your interest in industry-specific areas. So what role is the channel going to play in, and do you want them to help you push into more micro verticals? And if they do, will you put that back in the product, or will they own that?
That's a very good question. That's exactly what we're doing, by the way, as part of our channel strategy. So the partners have a lot of expertise, at least our partners. They're kind of very niche focused in certain micro verticals, and we like that, and they do better when they're focused. Some of them, because let's face it, was a period of time when there wasn't a lot of new technology coming out of Infor, they took it upon themselves to go build it, which helped the company actually. So we ended up buying those back, which is what we're doing now, and there's more we will buy back. Those are easy acquisitions. They tend to be small. Our sales force already knows them because they've been partnering with them, and they're already integrated on the same platform. So those are no-brainers to continue to buy some of those. We think it's a low-cost way to get some innovation going around the platform. We can't build everything. If they see something that we don't see, we don't have to take the risk. They put up their time and capital. If it works, we buy them back. So I'm happy for them to continue to do that. So that was one of the main reasons for doing this platform. They like this platform so much. Great, let's support it. Let's formally put it out there and let them go build what they want to build. And most of them were smart. They're not going to build anything that's competitive with them because they know they'll get crushed. They're going to build things we don't have. And so we'll just wait and see what they build. And if it's interesting, we have the option.
Final question. You're a privately held company, and actually you're owned by an equity company. My apologies for the next remark, but most of these companies are well known for their sole interest, and this their exit strategy. So I know they put in extra money in the past year, but ultimately as a customer I would be kind of scratching my head and wondering about the future ownership of the company, because ultimately this is an equity company held company. So how do you see that future?
I knew we took one question too many, but just about to get out of here without that. We had our owners in the room. I guess they left before we got that question. So So number one,
CJ's back there.
is Prescott CJ back there?
CJ.
Oh, there we go, CJ. You want to come up and talk about anything and tell us what our exit is? No. Why don't you come up and introduce? So CJ is with Summit. Summit is a kind of venture capital investor out of Boston, investing in mostly growth companies. Is Prescott in here? Oh, Prescott, come on up. Yeah. And Prescott's from Golden Gate. Yeah, exactly. It's like, you guys, what happened to him?
Well, just for a little bit of context on Golden Gate Capital, who's the majority control shareholder, we actually have invested over $1 billion behind Infor, and so have complete conviction around the strategy and the vision and the capability of this management team to execute upon what they've described. We have an evergreen fund, which is very unique in private equity, which basically means it's permanent capital, kind of like a private Berkshire Hathaway. And so there is no impetus for us to exit. We can own companies for 20, 30 years if that's appropriate. The reality, of course, is that all companies go through evolutionary growth, and capital markets end up being relevant at some point. And we think that the most likely progression for Infor is to ultimately become a public company. There's pros and cons to being a public company, lots of virtues to being private, but there's also a lot of recognition and basically free marketing that you can get from being a public company. You also have a public currency to go do additional acquisitions. So while we continue to be prepared to support Infor on a private company context, do acquisitions, going public is probably the right next step for them to continue to innovate the way they'd like to.
Yeah, I don't know if I have much to add to that. Summit's a growth equity investor. We're typically a very, very long-term investor. We're often investors in companies for, 7, 8, 10 years. So we take a very long-term perspective. We've been partners with Golden Gate on a number of occasions, worked quite well together. And, our motivation for getting more involved here recently is we think there's a great opportunity. You've seen or heard about the numbers. It's been a great growth story. Over the last year and a half or so. We think there's a gigantic opportunity here, and we're here to be supportive over the long haul and building an even bigger company than what we have today. So we're awfully excited about it.
Great. And from a transparency perspective, our debt is publicly traded, and we do have to file with the SEC. So if that's the concern, we just tell customers that they can go read it for themselves. So we're private on the equity side, but not on the debt side. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
I want to thank everyone for the good questions, the good discussion. Thank everybody on the executive team. And if there are any follow-up questions, you should know who your contacts are in corporate communications. We're happy to help you and answer any questions that you have. Thanks, everyone.